the vast majority of people are going to have most of their net worth tied up into two things, probably their home and then a 401k, which is probably going to be primarily ETFs. I do single stocks on this channel. I like single stocks. I'm passionate about it. However, I still have 401k and I have it actually all in ETFs, and then I do single stock investing in other accounts. Now, it doesn't really matter what account you have, but vast majority of people are going to own ETFs, and it's very, very important for wealth building. Probably, like I said, home and ETFs are the two most important things. So now it's important to understand what ETFs are and what they do, and when you should have them and when you shouldn't. ETFs are great for long-term wealth building. That's what stocks are meant for. That's what they do well. Now, in the short term, one thing I do see people online is, okay, maybe, you're going to buy a home in a year or two. Yeah, you can throw it in the stock market. Now, statistically, you will do better, right? 80% of the time, maybe even more. In 1 to 2 years, most likely there's not going to be a stock market crash, all that sort of stuff. Your money's going to go up. But in the case that it does, there has been many times in history when it hasn't. Specifically, we don't really get it on this, but in 2007, 2008, and then at the 2001 dot-com bubble, both those popped and the market was down basically for 5 years. So for long-term, 5, 10, 20, 30 years, ETFs are going to build wealth, and they're going to build a lot of wealth. But in the short term, they can go down. So it's important when you're close to retirement, or if we really want to buy a house in a year or two, not have money tied up into ETFs, because in the short term, for example, 2021, 2022, if you put your money in there and then you want it in 2022, you're not going to do particularly well. I think most people understand that concept, but some people don't. They just think the stock market goes up or that it's terrible. Long term, stock market ETFs, they will go up, they will build lots of wealth. And now there's different types of ETFs you can have. You really can't go wrong with something like S&P 500. It's just the top 500 companies in the United States. And the bad ones go away and the good ones stay at the top, and they keep building more and more wealth. It's an advantage because you get the companies that really hit it out of the park, at least the ones that are of decent size. The NVIDIAs, you're going to have NVIDIA in your ETF. Now, the bad thing is it doesn't really push the needle as it would holding the single stock. So it's risk reward. It's just a good middle ground for risk reward. I would never advocate for someone to put, large portions of their wealth into just like 3 or 4 stocks. That's usually not smart because there's too much risk. However, single stock, if you had let's say 40 stocks and you had a decent percentage of your wealth tied up into that, if you had the NVIDIA, then you would do better than if you just had an ETF and had it, because it's 40, it's one slice of 40 versus one slice of 50. So, but anyways, I think that's covering it decently well. Now there's different types of ETFs as well. I don't know why the chart seems to be glitched here, but this is Schwab as CHHD. This is a dividend fund. So it does build some growth. It builds it over time. Maybe the all-time chart will do better. Yeah, you're up 237%. And then you also get a 3% yield. Dividends are good. I did a video on it if you want to know about it. I'm not going to cover that too much in depth, but this can, in the event of retirement, if you want to just hey, we're going to, of course you can spend appreciation. I'm not saying you can't, but if you just, for whatever reason, wanted to live off dividends, just the dividends, and let the rest of it grow, you could do that, get a 3.3%. So let's just say you had $1 million, that'd be $30,000 a year, whatever it may be. You'd probably want a higher yield than that, and you can certainly find it. Something like JPI would do that. It gets you 7%, so that'd be $70,000 over the course of a year. But you'd also have to factor in probably JPI is going to go down with inflation. It's probably not going to beat inflation. It almost matched it last 5 years. But just if you're being cautious, maybe you set 1 to 2% away. So there's specialized ETFs. You can find even more specialized ETFs, something like SOXX, which just covers semiconductor stocks, right? So you can find basically any field you want. Now there's going to be, you have to be careful with something like the expense ratio. One's fairly high at 0.35, but at the same time you get diversification into an industry if you don't know enough about it. You're oh, semiconductors, that's AI stuff. I don't know much about it. I don't want to do all the research into it. Yeah, just buy SOX. You can do that for many things. You could do that for financials, you could do that for REITs, you could do that for all sorts of things. It may take some more research than just plopping it into S&P 500. I also like growth ETFs. I have a large percentage of my 401k in this specific one because I have a 401k with Vanguard, and it's going to do well. It's probably going to outperform the S&P 500 in the long term, right? In the short term, it might not, and they might do a bad job, but historically, growth stocks do outperform value stocks in the long term. They do not have as much of a hedge against a recession. So in the case that there is a recession, something like VUG is going to go down more. But over the long term, 20, 30 years, if you are somewhere in the range between 30 and 40, you're going to retire at 60, 65, having a large percentage of your 401k in something like growth ETFs is going to do fine. And honestly, even when it is down, if there was a recession, so you kept your job, putting it in those is actually going to do more because they're going to be down more, and then they're still going to outperform. So there's lots of different ways you can go. I'm not going to tell you specifically what to do. Something like a large mix between S&P 500 and growth. If you're still building your 401k, maybe something more dividend centric if you're in retirement. Although if you have plenty of money, having something like growth stocks is perfectly fine. Every person's situation is so different. There's probably some of you watching this video with well upwards of $1 million net worth, probably many of you watching with under 100,000. So giving a single recommendation is impossible for me, and it's important to do research. Hopefully this was a good introduction to it, or at least a baseline touching on things ETF. If you enjoyed, I'd appreciate if you liked or subscribed. I do daily stock content on this channel, and I appreciate all of you for watching.